Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 10 of College Football Throwdown. I am your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and with me today is my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Good evening, Alex, and podcast world.
Yes, the great world of the interweb, you know, all those tubes and wires that are out there listening to us right now. For those of you who haven't been listening to us for a while, we are this podcast, College Football Throwdown. We are a college football podcast that is by college football fans for college football fans. You can find us on footballthrowdown.podomatic.com. That's where we host our episodes, or on iTunes. And we like talking about, you know, our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, but also talking about the general goings-on in football as a national whole. And today's episode is going to be our Nebraska-specific episode, where we're going to talk about the Nebraska-South Alabama game. And the next episode that we do is going to be talking more generally about what happened in the college football landscape in Week 2. But before we dive into that, we're going to talk about the Nebraska-specific game, the Nebraska-South Alabama game. I missed a good portion of this game. I was looking at updates on my phone, you know, the play-by-play, but I was actually at the beach with some friends the other day, and it was really fun, so we weren't in a big hurry to leave. So I came back and was able to watch from like the midway through the third quarter on. I got all that, but the early part of the game I kind of missed, so I know it's a shame as a Husker fan.
Yes, we're going to have to work on that, pal.
As I recall, you're the one who said last time, that if I had to miss one, this would be the one to miss, South Alabama.
That's true. That is absolutely true. You got to pick your spots, and certainly going to the beach was a good idea.
Yes, it was. But you caught the full game. You were watching it from good old Traverse City.
That is correct. And so I'll go ahead and get us started on the podcast with this cold beverage here in front of me. Here we go on that. All right, here we go. In honor of our reputation tradition here. There we go. Okay, awesome. Now we're ready to talk some football.
That's right. So we're kind of going to break this down like we did with our previous analysis of the BYU game. Just kind of break it down into the positives and negatives of what we saw on the field. In terms of, you know, general overall like positives for me, definitely happy with our offense. You know, not a ton to complain about there. Tommy ran the game effectively. You know, we had a good variety of passing and, you know, running, especially. You know, we had Terrell Newby running for nearly 200 yards. You know, so we just controlled them on offense, which is what we should be the expectation, given that they're definitely a lesser opponent. And then defensively, we did a really good job of stuffing the rush. They couldn't do anything against us on the ground. But our biggest Achilles heel continues to be passing in the air. They had Davies, I think. They were passing to the guy he was covering a lot, and he was getting beat. And just in general, they had some big pass plays, even though those plays didn't usually result in points. But that would be the biggest thing I'm certainly worried about going into the Miami game next week.
Yeah, I would agree, Alex. I think that, you know, this is a game where you're right. It's hard to complain about the end result, and a very nice balance offensively and defensively. You know, you only give up 9 points, including a late touchdown. But in the reality of it, I have to look at this from the perspective of our opponent and what I would have liked to have seen. And I'm still very leery of where Nebraska's at from an offensive line standpoint. Well, really both lines of scrimmage, both offensive and defensive. Those are areas that I have great concern over. We simply do not have the talent / depth that is going to be necessary for us to really have a substantial season this season. That has to improve if we're going to have success starting next week against the Miami Hurricanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess this is a good time to mention, on the last podcast we made some predictions about this game as well as the Oregon MSU game, which we'll get to on the next podcast. But on that one, Dad, you said that Nebraska was going to win 48-28, and then I ended up saying 35-21. So we were both kind of worried about South Alabama's offensive capabilities since they have this kind of influx of talent because of that unique situation there in Alabama. But, like you said, I mean, there are things to nitpick certainly, but at the end of the day, 48-9 victory with the only touchdown of the game came in at the end when we were playing a lot of our second teamers. It's hard to find fault in that victory. It's more of a, what does this show about our team when we're facing tougher competition?
Exactly. Did we get accomplished what we needed to get accomplished? I was the only criticism I might have had is I would have liked to have seen us have an even stronger commitment to the running game. As it was, we were pretty balanced. We ran the ball 37 times and we passed it 38 times. So we still threw it more than we ran it.
Well, by one.
By one, right. But this is a game where I would have liked to have seen that number be a 60%, 40% split, or maybe even 65-35, just to make sure that not only did our starters get lots of reps, but that the second teamers, after we got the thing in control. Now, some would argue that, well, if we had just loaded up and done that, maybe we wouldn't have had as much success because of that balance is part of what made the offense effective. So, like you say, that's nitpicking. But bottom line is that we got through it. It appears we got through it most significantly without adding a lot of additional significant injuries. It would appear that we got through it without losing anybody else at this point. That's the word I'm seeing. And if that's the case, and you combine that with hopefully getting our two linebackers back that we lost to injury, as well as maybe even the possibility of some other players who are dinged up or a little bit injured getting a little better, over the course of this next week, so we can go into that Miami game a little healthier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it's also worth noting that for this game compared to the BYU game, we had some players coming back from suspension that were able to play this time around, and that helped us a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Having Michael Rose and Jonathan Rose both back. Michael Rose played a lot of snaps because of the other two linebackers being injured. Michael was very, very important. And then Jonathan Rose also. You already mentioned a little earlier that we had some personnel issues early in the game where their team was having some success with some deep passes, and so we had to pull some defensive backs to coach them up and get them to understand what they were doing wrong within the scheme. They went back out and played later, of course, but just having that depth and that ability to do that rotation is going to become invaluable as we go forward, because next week we're going to see a team with far more talent, and that's going to be a bigger challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'd feel more confident about the Miami game if it was in Lincoln, but the fact that it's going to be our first away game, with the new coaching staff and all that, and that it's against a tough opponent, it's going to be a challenge for us for sure, but not an insurmountable one, I'd say.
Well, it should, yes, it will tell us a lot about where we're at and give us a gauge. We'd be feeling a little differently probably if we just hadn't had that Hail Mary loss in the first game. But as you noted, the reality is that we are where we are. So let's see how this all plays out, right?
Right. Well, that's good transition, because on the last podcast, I talked a little bit about how I was really hoping that BYU could pull it out against Boise State, who was a top 25 ranked team, and you were a little bit doubting because of the fact that they're playing with their second team quarterback. I saw some of the highlights from that game. He threw some serious bombshell passes, like long balls in that game. So I think he's a pretty good second teamer.
Yeah, he certainly is, and the new poll has come out for this week already here Sunday evening, and lo and behold, BYU is in the top 25. Now they do play UCLA this week at UCLA. That's going to be an interesting game for them.
Yeah, well, now the thing is, against us, maybe we were viewing BYU as like not that top tier of a team or whatever, but after the whole nation seeing the way they beat us and then the way they beat Boise State, nobody's gonna be playing BYU bringing their B game. They're not gonna want to repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
But my point with that was I was thinking earlier today about this is my best case realistic scenario for the rest of Nebraska season to play out right here is if BYU continues to have success, let's say they win upset one or two more people, do a decent job with their season, then we go through and we beat everybody who's left on our schedule in the regular season except for Michigan State, because I predict that's going to be a loss. So we'd be going into, we'd win the conference in this case, win our division, I should say, and then let's say we play Ohio State in the conference championship game and lose that game. So we have 3 losses on our record, going into bowl season. But then our 3 losses will be to a Michigan State team that will probably be in the top 10-ish. Ohio State in the conference championship game, who may very well be the number 1 team in the nation, going back to reclaim their title. And then a BYU team who has shown themselves to be a legitimately good football team, and that BYU loss doesn't affect our conference season in any way. But I feel like if it comes to, bowl selecting people, the fact that we would have lost, and hopefully in this ideal scenario I have in my head, our losses to Michigan State and Ohio State would be hard-fought losses, not blowouts. If we did all of that, I would consider ourselves going to a pretty top-tier, non-championship level, bowl game, like a pretty nice bowl game, and if we could win that, I'd be very pleased overall if Mike Riley could pull that off.
You hit it right on the very beginning there, Alex. Ideal.
Yes.
That is the ideal.
I notice how I said realistically ideal, because obviously the ideal situation is if we beat MSU and beat Ohio State and go to the championship game, but that's not happening. In any scenario.
I would be the scenario you just described. I would be very happy with. Absolutely, for that to happen would require us obviously to make a huge leap of improvement this week that allows us to go down there to Miami and win that football game, and then to continue to progress as a team, building talent and depth throughout the season, so that we could compete on all these games that we have coming up in conference. That at this point I'd have to say are toss-up games for us. So it's going to be an exciting season though to see how that plays out. How close can we get to what you just described? I think that's the real crux of it for Nebraska fans.
All right, interesting. So what's your overall takeaway coming away from the South Alabama game for the Cornhuskers?
Well, in watching the game, Alex, and I've been able to watch a little of it a second time, is the offensive line did definitely play better. They seem to be more in sync. Now, some of that obviously is competition, but I think some of it is also just getting those additional snaps together. So we just need to see that progress. I think we just need to remain healthy. I'm also very pleased with what appears to be an emerging group of wide receivers collectively that are going to do quite well for us. And Tommy, when given time, will deliver that ball, in a really effective way. I mean, he does have a nice throw, a nice velocity on his ball. The center snap was quite a bit better in this game than it was in the first game, and so maybe in fact it was an issue with the ball being just wet or whatever in the first game, because it was so hot. But he definitely was still snapping them high, and Tommy was having to reach for him. But they were there with much better velocity. One thing I continue to be concerned about is the guy who replaced our punter who got hurt in the BYU game. He's actually a past quarterback. He's a good athlete, but he averaged 34 and some change on punts, and that's not good enough. So we're losing 10 yards basically every time we exchange the football because of our loss of a punter, and that's going to become huge at some point in some game if that young man and Sam Foltz can't get back fairly soon.
Yeah, well, and not like I don't try to remember from the stats. I don't think we had any like difficult field goals, but I think we had one or two in the game, and our kicker made them this time. Which he did in the BYU game. Which
Correct. Drew did make both field goals, including a 42-yarder. And
okay,
again, throughout all of camp, the reports were all that Drew was doing very well. So I really am hopeful that whatever it was that was kind of a mechanical issue for him in game one is gone and won't be repeated.
let's hope so. Yeah, my overall thoughts are kind of similar. Kind of like I said at the beginning, I'm overall happy with how our offense played in that game. I'm happy with the improvements Tommy seems to have made over the off season, and I'm happy that our defense, did a good job in terms of rush defense. Kind of like the BYU game, we had sections of the game where we shut down their run effectively. Then there were other sections where that wasn't the case. But this time around, we stopped them pretty good there. My biggest concern is definitely the secondary because, teams that have better athletes at wide receiver and stuff are going to make things difficult for us for sure.
Uh, I would agree. I would agree. And that's the thing is you look at our team and we have some areas after two games where people could identify and say, okay, here's a strength that Nebraska has, and we're going to take that away. And that's what you can expect from Miami's, coaching staff is number one, they're not gonna let us, go up and down the field throwing the football on all these little flip passes to the side and things like that. If we try to do that against Miami and their speed, they're going to bait us into a pick six. That is my prediction. We cannot live on that. We have got to establish the line of scrimmage against Miami.
Yeah, this is a good chance, I guess. Why don't we give some predictions about the Miami game? Do a score like we did
Yeah,
for this last one.
let's do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say I think it's gonna be a tough game. I think it'll be close. So I'll go ahead and say 28-24. We win it. That's what I'll say.
I'm so proud of you, Alex. Awesome. I love your optimism. As you know, your dad tends to be a little more conservative in that regard. And I think I'm going to go on the flip side of that. I'm going to say, based on what I've seen, I believe that Nebraska, it just isn't quite there. And we're likely to see this be a loss. My expectation is that we're gonna come out, we're gonna play hard, and we're gonna have periods of time when we look pretty good, but that over the course of the whole 60 minutes of the game, they're just gonna out athlete us enough that they're gonna be able to beat us. I'm gonna predict the final score is gonna be somewhat similar to yours, probably more like 28-17 though, in favor of the Hurricanes. So I'm gonna have to pick against my own passion of
Your
Husky
blood.
football because I number one, I'm trying to be realistic, and number two, I truly believe that we'll see continued improvement with this team over the course of the season. But what I saw from the BYU game told me that we were not as far along as I thought. And all these injuries to obviously the key spots we couldn't afford. There were two things, Alex, right? When we talked at the beginning of the year, two of the areas we could not have injuries, linebacker and defensive end. And where have we had a mass of injuries? Linebacker. Where have we lost one of our captains and our key defensive leaders? Defensive end. I mean, it's just incredible to me that those are the two areas that we get injuries. And I might feel a little bit differently if I had seen more results out of those two spots, but I just haven't.
Alrighty then. Well, we will see how things play out. Week 3 of college football, there's already been, tons of upsets and craziness going on, and that's what makes the sport so great. So we'll look forward to the game.
Oh, Alex, I will say one thing about it. We are about a 3 to 4.5 point underdog in this game. So even Vegas has picked us to lose, which, that's the first time we've been an underdog this year.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. The fact that we're going to be playing, at an opposing stadium at a prediction to lose. We'll be the underdog, as they say. It'll be interesting to see if Riley can kind of get the guys fired up, with that sort of underdog mentality. We have something to prove here, That was something that Bo could do sometimes, to get the team in that kind of mentality. So it'll just be interesting to see if Riley can do that too.
It really will be, and it's going to be a night game, for Miami. And of course, even though they get terrible attendance in general, darn good and well, with Nebraska coming to town, they're going to fill the place, and it's going to be a rocking environment. So, count on that for, this game this week.
Yep. Alrighty then. Well, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, like I said, you can find us on footballthrowdown.podomatic.com or on their Podomatic app at the same address. We're on iTunes as College Football Throwdown. You can leave us a review, comment on the page, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We always like hearing from the fans. Our email is huskerpete13@gmail.com. And I want to thank all you out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this good old discussion.
Yes, and it's good to have a W. So let's go out there and even though I predicted the loss, that doesn't mean I ain't going to root for them. I want to see us win. So let's go Big Red.
All right. And until next time, Cornhusker fans.